We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
With Greece's future in the Eurozone uncertain, nations of the Euro's southern periphery are looking on with particular concern about what impact the latest developments could have on them. Of these, Italy is key. It's the Euro's third biggest economy after Germany and France. Unlike Greece, it hasn't needed a bailout, but under its new young Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, Italy has undergone tough austerity measures and painful reforms. Renzi is opposed to debt relief for Greece, saying it would be unfair to the people of other European nations who have also had to face cuts. Renzi has already been facing calls by opposition parties for Italy to have its own referendum on the euro. So would he ever consider giving Italians a choice over the single currency? Beyond the Eurozone, Italy has also been on the front line of the immigration crisis in the Mediterranean. Thousands of migrants who have risked their lives at sea to reach Europe have landed in Italy. An unstable and divided Libya is a haven for people smugglers. So is the EU planning military action in Libya to stop the trafficking networks? We'll discuss this and much more with the Italian Prime Minister as Matteo Renzi talks to Al Jazeera. Prime Minister Renzi, thank you so much for talking to Al Jazeera. It's been a defining week for the Eurozone. Now we're going to have a final summit on Sunday, an emergency summit, to try to come to some solution, some conclusion to the problems that Greece has been having within the Eurozone. You said that you hope that Sunday's meeting will be the final meeting about Greece. How do you envision a solution to Greece's membership in the Eurozone?
I think we must absolutely solve definitively and finally the question, the problem of Greece, because after 6 months of discussion, polemics, compromise, this is the moment of solution. I think there is a possibility to conclude an agreement. It's obviously for everyone the necessity for Greece to realize the structural reforms absolutely necessary to invest in the future, so pensioners, so taxation, so reorganization of a Greek economy. At the same time, I think we must conclude and help support to Greece for the next months and the next years. But the problem in this moment, in my opinion, is not simply focused on Greece. The real problem is how type of Europe you image for the future. So now we conclude the Greece emerges, but then we must absolutely change the perception for Europe and above all for the new generation of European people.
Staying with Greece for a second, do you think that they should get some debt relief?
I think in this moment this is not on the table for a lot of reasons. First of all, because the majority of countries are against this possibility.
But are you against or are you for?
For me, the problem is not the Greek debts. For me, the problem is the organization of Greek economy. Greece is a great country, not as number of people, but for history, for the quality of democracy, for the quality of experience in Greece. So I don't imagine an Europe without Greece, because an Europe without Greece is an Europe without a very important value and very important also lifestyle. But at the same time, I think we push the Greek government in the correct direction, because it's impossible to force the citizens of Italy, of France, of Germany, of Spain to realize the reforms and give the message, okay, this is important only for you, but not for Greece people. So this is the question. The debt in this moment is not on the table, and I think the most important challenge today is come back to the trust. The decision of Tsipras to call a referendum had a lot of problems for the older government, because some colleagues told, okay, so everyone could call a referendum to decide, no, pay my debt. This is not correct, not possible. I think we can avoid that question and invest in the Greek economy and in the Greek future.
I mean, you've said that basically Europe should be about growth and not austerity. Should we read into that austerity hasn't worked? You just said that Greece was pushed into the situation. Is it time to end the quite severe austerity that has been imposed in some corners of the Eurozone?
The real challenge for Greece in this moment is give a message of structural change in the country. There is a second problem. The second problem is Europe. 15 years ago, Europe decided in Lisbon strategy for the future. And the fathers, our political fathers, decided Europe will be in the next 20 years the most brilliant, the most dynamic, the most innovative part of the world. This is true after 15 years? No. Europe lost a lot of opportunities because the approach of Brussels, the approach of European institutions was focused above all in the bureaucracy, in the red tape of bureaucracy, and not in the real challenge for the future of young people. This is the problem of my country.
Is part of that problem, perhaps, that Europe seems to be almost divided in two, a sort of Northern European way of doing things, and often them accusing the Southern Europeans of not really playing along to the same rules. Did you see any of that? Do you feel any of that, obviously, as a Southern European leader?
Europe is divided in a lot of parties, not only in two parties. There is, I know there is a difference between North and South, but really, we can, let me be very frank, there is also a different division. There is the division between the first Europe. Europe was created 58 years ago in Rome, the six country founders, and then the other countries, and the new Europe, the East Europe. Now Europe is for 28 countries. And the process of change of Europe was very, very speedily, maybe too much.
And so do you think Europe has become too big, perhaps, and the Eurozone?
I think Eurozone is composed by 19 countries. But I think in this moment it's impossible to come back. So maybe it's a paradox, but we must go ahead with more velocity and with strong determination in the process. My challenge as one of young leader is create a vision also for the future.
And so that future, a big part of it will be decided on Sunday. At that meeting, at the emergency summit, what side are you going to be on when the question will be, should we keep Greece in the Eurozone, which it does seem it is going to be?
It's not easy to imagine today what is the future, but I think there are the possibilities Greece stay inside Eurozone with the correct agreements. So now the decision depends on the Greek government. If Greek government will choose an idea of economic proposal good for everyone, and this is possible, I think the next Monday Greece will be in the Eurozone and the emergency for Greece will be solved. But, I repeat, we must absolutely decide to invest a lot of energies, a lot of resources in the problem of Europe.
As things stand right now, there seems to be relatively little risk of economic contagion to other Eurozone countries, including, of course, Italy. But what we are seeing perhaps is political contagion, because the idea of a referendum like the Greeks had seems to have taken hold in Italy as well. We see many of the anti-Euro parties, the Northern League, which is very strong, the Five Star Movement, also members from other bigger parties that are now calling for Italy to hold its own referendum on the euro. Now, I know that there's constitutional issues in Italy for which that couldn't happen now, but you are the man known for changing things when they need changing. So is the will there on your part? Would the will ever be there to give the Italian people a voice when it comes to the euro? So a referendum in Italy about its membership of the euro.
First of all, there is not contagion for Italy in the economic fields. Yes, there are risks around Europe to create a wave against European ideals. If you think France with Marine Le Pen, Spain with Podemos, some countries present a lot of those movements and parties. In Italy, a lot of parties in this moment support the position of Tsipras in the left, but also in the right. Also in the right, I think it's impossible to create a referendum for euro in Italy, but the absolute majority of people in Italy is for Europe, not against Europe. The problem is in the next year we will have a referendum, 2016, to accept or not accept the reforms presented by my government, a lot of reforms. I'm really confident we will win this referendum, but this will be the place in which the people could count the real consensus or not consensus at our political way.
You've been mentioning a lot about how we need a new Europe, that Europe needs to change, be more inclusive. And I suppose at that point, a lot of people would feel that they would want to have a say in the future of Europe. So again, I ask you, I know that there would be difficulties, but are you in principle opposed to ever having a referendum in Italy, or is it something that maybe down the line you would ever consider?
The referendum in Italy for the permanence in Europe, it's impossible not only for the constitution,
but for the euro rather than Europe.
Also for the euro, it's impossible for constitution. Obviously, there are also in Italy a lot of people, there is a lot of people who think, but after the entrance in euro, Italy lost a lot of position in the rankings. If you think in the first 50 years after World War II, Italy was the first economy in European area. After 1992 Maastricht treaties, Italy lost a lot of position in the ranking. But the cause of this problem are not Europe. The problem is the lack of intelligence of Italian politicians who decide don't make structural reforms. Germany realized reforms, Italy not.
Let's move now to another issue that Italy has been dealing with, and that is immigration. We think since the start of 2015, well more than 100,000 migrants have made their way across the Mediterranean. Many of them land in Lampedusa or Sicily, and obviously Italy seems to bear the brunt of them. Now, at a EU summit regarding redistribution of migrants, according to reports, you lost your patience for the issue of redistribution. I quote what you said. You said, if that's your idea of Europe, you can keep it. Either give us solidarity or don't waste our time. You don't want to take 40,000 migrants. You're not fit to be called Europe. Now, there is a deal on the table, but it's still a voluntary deal about other European countries sharing the number of migrants arriving. Do you feel Italy has been left alone in this?
I think the problem is not about Italy, because Italy is in condition to solve the problem alone. It's a great problem. It's a difficult moment, but we are able to solve the problem without Europe. So, my position wasn't a request of help to European people for Italy. My request was a call for common ideals of Europe. If you think your idea of Europe is only a budget, austerity, parameter, and not common ideals and common values, in which if there is a young woman who stay in the sea, I run to save her. Then, if there are not the possibility to accept in Italy, she come back, because we organize the fly for come back to Africa, the people who arrive without permission. So this is a message very clear. It's impossible to arrive in Italy without right to stay in Italy. But if you stay in the sea, I try to save, because I am a human being. I'm not a number.
The rules as they stand now is that when these migrants and asylum seekers arrive, they ask for asylum in the country where they land, which tends to be Italy. I mean, you just said Italy can do it on its own, but do you not want the redistribution of many of these asylum seekers and economic migrants? Because it's certainly causing tensions in Italy. We hear it's quite a sort of animated discourse, to say the least. There's a lot of tensions in Italy, a lot of anger often directed at migrants. So when you say that Italy doesn't need help, what do you mean?
I said very clearly, the problem is not for the ability of Italy to accept the people who have the right to asylum. So we have three types of message. First, if there is a problem on sea, we try to save, because you belong to a human being and not to bureaucratic numbers. This is the first. When we save somebody, and the people arrive in Sicily or in Calabria or in Puglia, the problem is different. If there is the permission, the right to asylum, for the Europeans' rules accepted by the Italian government in the past, and this was a mistake for me, but I wasn't prime minister, with the President Berlusconi, Italian government decided to accept the principle for which everyone who arrives in Italy asks asylum only in Italy. This is a mistake, because obviously the countries in the borders are the worst countries for the...
Forgive me for interrupting, but then do you feel a reluctance from a lot of the Northern European countries, and many of them, Germany and Sweden, do have proportionally have a huge number of asylum seekers, but do you feel a reluctance when you hear from Eastern Europe, sometimes from the UK, saying that they don't want to accept? Do you feel angry and let down by that side? Is that an example for you of Europe not working?
It's clearly one example of European doesn't work in the case of not acceptation of the principle, but not for a problem of concrete problem of tomorrow. If tomorrow there is a problem, Italy is in condition to solve the problem. But it's Europe, it's not in condition to become only a bureaucratic place in which nobody try to solve a common problem. So this is a message very clear. If you are right to asylum, you have a right. And in my constitution, in our constitution, there are an article clear. We accept the people who have the right to asylum. Article 10. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who arrive in Italy without permission. Those guys, these people, unfortunately, will come back. This is a problem for the people who try to leave the country and to risk the life with the ships, with the
So you're saying you will send them back to the country of origin?
This is a very clear message. Italy, bring these people and come back in the country of provenience. But if Europe doesn't accept to solve this problem, Europe lost the identity. The reason for which Europe was born is not simply an economic agreement. It's not simply the currency. It's not simply euro. European ideals were the real reasons for which, after 70 years, we can celebrate a place of peace. But for the ideals, not for the economies.
One of the things that changed the situation was Libya and the instability there. There's currently two governments, the UN envoy Bernardino Leon doesn't seem to be making any headway in finding a political solution. Now, you have gone on the record a couple of times saying that military operation in Libya was not on the table. At the end of May, there was a WikiLeaks release. They released 2 classified EU documents. And in it, it said that the EU is actually seriously looking at the option of an attack on civilian infrastructure in Libya to stop the refugee flow, possibly confronting ISIL as well. So I'm asking you now, is the EU considering any kind of military operation in Libya? And was your government party to any of these talks?
In this moment, there are not on the table possibilities to ground presence of European Union or United Nations in Libya.
You said that the EU isn't considering any ground action in Libya. Any talk of airstrikes? I mean, can you categorically say that the EU is not considering any kind of military intervention in Libya?
In this moment is that, yes, we are not considering an operation as European Union in Libya on ground. This is not...
And airstrikes?
First preparation, first presentation, first idea of European Union is support the efforts of Bernardino Leon.
3 Al Jazeera journalists are facing retrial in Egypt for allegedly spreading false news and aiding and abetting terrorism. We're expecting the final verdict on July 30th. The case has been condemned by the White House, the EU, Australian, Canadian, British governments, as well as human rights groups like Amnesty. Now, Italy and Egypt actually have a relatively close relation. Italy is the biggest trading partner of Egypt in the EU. When President Sisi came to Europe, you were the first person that he visited. So what do you think of Egypt's clampdown on free media? And do you think that these journalists should be released and all the charges against them wiped?
I think Al-Sisi is a great leader. I think the position for Egypt is absolutely crucial in the Mediterranean. And I think after a lot of crisis, polemics, tensions, finally Egypt invests in the future under the leadership of Al-Sisi. Obviously, it's a long way, it's a difficult way, and we need a lot of efforts around the area to support this process. At the same time, I think it's absolutely important to Egypt open the legislation to free media, and I'm convinced for Egypt and for every part of this area, it's important to permit the journalists to save the possibility to make the job, to continue to do the jobs. And for this reason, I will be in contact with the Egyptian government to support every correct and position to solve this case. But let me be very frank, in this moment, Egypt will be saved only with the leadership of Al-Sisi. This is my personal position, and I'm proud to the friendship with him, and I will support in direction of peace, because Mediterranean without Egypt will be absolutely a place without peace. Obviously, I will give the Italian message to support for the freedom of media, as is correct.
Well, we hope you will use your friendship with President Sisi to help the case of our journalists. Final question. As we've been discussing, it's such a difficult time right now, especially for a country like Italy. So we have a Eurozone crisis, instability within the European Union, tensions with Russia over Ukraine, a very unstable Middle East. We've seen problems with immigration. You also have your own reforms to do at home. What is the thing that worries you the most? What do you think is your priority over the next few months and years?
My priority is not structural reforms. My priority is not Eurozone. My priority is not Ukraine and Russia. My priority is not terrorism. My priority is come back to confidence for my people. Italian people lost 20 years of opportunities. Now it's time to come back to be Italy. And Italy will be a place in which really we can image a different vision for my country, obviously, but above all for Europe.
Prime Minister Renzi, thank you so much for talking to Al Jazeera.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.